The impossible detection. Admiral Kextar had commanded the Zephyrian Grand Fleet for over 4 decades, and in all that time, he had never seen his sensor operators look quite so confused. The bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion hummed with the usual sounds of a military vessel, the soft chirping of communication arrays, the steady thrum of the engines, and the quiet conversations of officers going about their duties. But today, something was different. "Admiral," called out Commander Thisik, his scaled head tilted in the way that indicated deep concentration among his species. "We're detecting some unusual energy signatures in Sector 7. Kextar's elongated form rose from his command throne, his 4 arms moving with practiced efficiency as he adjusted his uniform. The Zephyrians had evolved from an aquatic species, and their tall, streamlined bodies reflected their oceanic heritage. Their technology was among the most advanced in the known galaxy, their sensors capable of detecting a single photon at distances measured in light years. "Define unusual, Commander," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen every possible anomaly the universe could throw at a fleet. "Sir, we're reading quantum fluctuations that don't match any known propulsion signatures. The patterns are, well, they're completely alien to our databases." Thisik's webbed fingers danced across his console, bringing up a 3-dimensional display that showed the Grand Fleet's formation. 12 massive dreadnoughts arranged in a perfect defensive sphere around the flagship. The display showed their position in the Kepler Nebula, where the fleet maintained its eternal watch over the Empire's most sensitive border. This was where they guarded against the return of ancient threats, where they monitored for signs of the enemies that had once nearly destroyed their civilization a millennium ago. "Could it be the Devourers?" asked another officer, and the bridge fell silent at the mention of that name. The Devourers, an ancient race of mechanical beings that had swept through the galaxy 1,000 years ago, consuming entire worlds before mysteriously vanishing. "Negative," Thisik replied, though his voice carried uncertainty. "The signatures are too small, too focused. This appears to be a single vessel. But Admiral," he paused, his large eyes reflecting the glow of his instruments, "according to our readings, it just appeared. No approach vector, no FTL signature, no energy buildup. One moment our sensors showed empty space, the next moment we detected these readings." Kextar felt a chill run through his body. In 40 years of service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were screaming that something unprecedented was happening. "Full tactical alert," he ordered. "All ships to battle stations." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers carried out their duties. Warning lights bathed the command center in amber light, and throughout the fleet, crews prepared for potential combat. The Grand Fleet was the most powerful military force in Zephyrian space. 12 vessels, each measuring over 2 kilometers in length, armed with weapons that could crack planets and shielded by technology that had never been breached. "Admiral," Thisik called out, and there was something in his voice that made everyone stop what they were doing. "Sir, we have visual contact." The main screen flickered to life, showing the star-scattered darkness of space around their formation. At first, Kextar saw nothing unusual. Then, like a shape emerging from a dream, he saw it, a sleek vessel that seemed to shimmer into existence between his 3rd and 4th dreadnoughts. The ship was unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases, where their vessels were organic curves that reflected their aquatic heritage. This newcomer was all angular lines and aggressive geometry. It was smaller than their dreadnoughts, but somehow projected an aura of controlled lethality that made it seem much larger. "How is that possible?" whispered one of the junior officers. "Nothing can penetrate our sensor grid. Nothing can approach the Grand Fleet undetected." As if in response to the officer's question, the alien vessel began to move. It didn't accelerate gradually like a normal ship. It simply began moving, as if the laws of physics were more like gentle suggestions than ironclad rules. The vessel glided between the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts with a casual grace that spoke of complete confidence. "Weapons status?" Kextar asked, though he kept his voice calm. A good commander never let his crew see his fear, and right now he was more frightened than he had been since his first combat engagement 4 decades ago. All ships report weapons powered and ready, Admiral. Target acquisition systems are having difficulty maintaining locks. The vessel appears to be partially phased out of normal spacetime. Partially phased out of normal spacetime. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about the universe. Their science had always been built on the principle that reality was fixed, predictable, and ultimately knowable. This vessel seemed to exist in deliberate defiance of those principles. "Sir," the communications officer announced, her voice tight with stress, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. They're hailing us on standard diplomatic channels." Kextar straightened in his command throne. Whatever species had built this impossible ship, they at least understood the basics of interstellar protocol. Put them through. The main screen shifted from the external view to show the bridge of the alien vessel. The first thing that struck Kextar was how comfortable it looked. Where Zephyrian bridges were designed for maximum efficiency and tactical advantage, this bridge seemed designed for beings who expected to spend long periods in space and wanted to feel at home while doing it. The second thing that struck him was the beings themselves. They were bipedal, roughly humanoid in appearance, with skin tones ranging from pale to dark brown and hair that came in various colors. They moved with an easy confidence that spoke of a species comfortable with the unknown. The being in the center of the screen stepped forward. She was female. Kextar assumed, based on her smaller stature and the way the others deferred to her. She wore a uniform that somehow managed to look both military and civilian, formal and casual, all at the same time. "Greetings," she said, and her voice carried warmth despite the seriousness of the situation. "I am Captain Maya Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Phantom. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we needed to be certain we could trust you before making formal contact." Trust. The word seemed almost absurd given the circumstances. This human, for that's what they called themselves, according to the translation matrix, had appeared inside the most secure military formation in Zephyrian space and was talking about trust. "Captain Rodriguez," Kextar replied, his training taking over. "I am Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian Grand Fleet. Your presence here is unprecedented. How did you penetrate our defensive perimeter?" The human's expression grew more serious. "Admiral, that's a conversation I think we need to have in private. What I'm about to tell you will change your understanding of the current strategic situation in this galaxy. You will explain yourself now, or face the consequences of hostile action within Zephyrian sovereign space," Kextar said, though even as he spoke the words, he wondered what consequences they could actually impose on beings who could appear and disappear at will. Captain Rodriguez nodded, as if she had expected this response. "Admiral, 3 months ago, our long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving through the outer galaxy. Signatures that match historical records from 1,000 years ago. The Devourers are returning." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. The Devourers, the nightmare that haunted every spacefaring civilization's darkest fears. The mechanical horrors that had swept through the galaxy, consuming entire species before vanishing as mysteriously as they had appeared. "That's impossible," Physics said, breaking the silence. "Our sensors would have detected them long before your primitive." He stopped himself, but the damage was done. "Primitive." Captain Rodriguez raised an eyebrow, and for the first time, her expression showed a hint of amusement. "Admiral, how long have we been in your sensor range?" Kextar checked the chronometer. "Approximately 17 minutes. Actually, we've been observing your fleet for 6 hours. We've been sitting motionless relative to your formation, running passive scans, analyzing your technology, and recording your communications. Your sensors detected us only when we chose to reveal ourselves." The implications hit Kextar like a physical blow. If these humans could remain undetected at will, if they could appear anywhere without warning, Then every assumption the Zephyrian Empire had made about galactic security was wrong. "You're lying," Thisic said, but his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Phantom's chief scientist, stepped forward on the screen. She was an older human with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "Commander, would you like us to demonstrate? We recorded your conversation about the possibility of devourer involvement approximately 4 hours ago. We also have detailed scans of your fleet composition, weapons systems, and shield configurations." She rattled off a series of technical specifications that made several Zephyrian officers gasp. Information that should have been impossible for any external observer to obtain, delivered with the casual precision of someone reading from a shopping list. "How?" Kextar asked, and for the first time in decades, he felt truly humbled. "We call it phase drive technology," Captain Rodriguez explained. "It allows us to exist partially outside normal spacetime, moving through dimensions that conventional sensors cannot detect. We developed it because we had to." Had to. Kextar leaned forward in his throne. "Admiral, Earth is not a particularly large or wealthy world. When we first encountered the galactic community 50 years ago, we realized we were surrounded by civilizations with technology far beyond our own. We couldn't match your firepower, your shields, or your sensors through conventional means. So we did what humans do. We found a different approach." Captain Rodriguez smiled, and there was something both reassuring and terrifying about that smile. "We became invisible. We became the species that could go anywhere, see anything, learn everything. We became the galaxy's silent guardians." "Silent guardians," Kextar repeated. "Admiral, in the past 50 years, how many supposedly natural disasters have prevented wars? How many vital communications have been mysteriously delivered at exactly the right moment? How many weapon shipments have vanished in transit, only to reappear in the hands of peacekeeping forces?" The Admiral's mind raced through decades of military history, recalling dozens of incidents that had seemed like fortunate coincidences at the time. The sudden appearance of crucial intelligence that had prevented the Zephyrian-Andorian War. The mysterious disappearance of a plague weapon that had been en route to a separatist faction. The timely arrival of medical supplies during the Kepler station crisis. "You've been manipulating galactic politics for 50 years. Thisic asked, his voice a mixture of awe and horror. "We've been preventing catastrophes," Dr. Vasquez corrected gently. "We learned early that civilizations with vast military power often make decisions based on fear rather than wisdom. We simply ensured that when those decisions would have led to unnecessary destruction, other options became available." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward again. "But now we face a threat that manipulation and subtlety cannot solve. The devourers are returning, and this time, they're not coming for individual worlds. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected a massive fleet, larger than anything they deployed 1,000 years ago. They're moving systematically through the outer rim, consuming everything in their path." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Admiral, they'll reach Zephyrian space within 2 years. Alone, neither our civilizations nor any other in the galaxy can stop them. Together, we might have a chance." Kextar stood slowly, his mind struggling to process everything he had learned in the past few minutes. The humans weren't conquerors, they were protectors. They weren't primitive. They were so advanced that they had been reshaping galactic politics for half a century without anyone knowing. And they weren't here to threaten the Zephyrian Empire. They were here to save it. "What do you propose?" he asked finally. "A meeting," Captain Rodriguez replied. "You, me, and representatives from every major galactic civilization. A council to prepare for what's coming. But first, Admiral, I need you to make a choice." "What choice?" "Whether you trust a species that has spent 50 years learning everything about you, or whether you try to fight both us and the Devourers alone." The Revelation and Alliance. Admiral Kextar had made many difficult decisions in his 4 decades of military service, but none quite like this one. He stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, looking at the impossible human ship that floated serenely among his fleet, and tried to reconcile everything he thought he knew about the galaxy with the reality that had just been presented to him. "Admiral," Physic whispered, "what are your orders?" Before Kextar could respond, Captain Rodriguez spoke again from the main screen. "Admiral, I understand this is a lot to process. Perhaps it would help if you could see what we're facing." Dr. Vasquez moved to what appeared to be a control console on the Phantom's bridge. "We're transmitting sensor data from our deep space monitoring network. This represents 3 months of continuous observation of the Outer Rim territories." The main display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. At first, everything looked normal. Star systems marked in blue for inhabited worlds, yellow for resource extraction sites, red for disputed territories. Then the display began to move, showing changes over time. From the galactic edge, a dark wave began to spread inward. System after system winked out of existence, leaving behind empty space where once there had been thriving worlds. The pattern was methodical, relentless, and utterly terrifying. 17 systems consumed in the past 3 months, Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice clinical despite the horror of what she was describing. Each one completely stripped of all matter down to the atomic level. The Devourers aren't just taking resources, they're converting entire star systems into raw materials for their fleet. Kextar watched the display with growing dread. The mathematical progression was clear. At their current rate of expansion, the Devourers would reach the core worlds within 18 months. The Zephyrian Empire, for all its power and pride, would be consumed along with everything else. "How do you know about this?" Physic asked, his voice strained. "Our long-range sensors show nothing." Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Commander, your sensors are designed to detect ships and weapons moving through normal space. The Devourers learned long ago that the best way to avoid detection is to approach from directions that 3-dimensional thinking cannot perceive." She gestured to Dr. Vasquez, who brought up another display. This one showed sensor readings that made no sense to conventional physics, energy signatures that seemed to exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously, mass readings that fluctuated between positive and negative values, and temporal distortions that suggested the Devourers were moving backward through time as well as forward through space. "We can detect them because phase drive technology operates on similar principles," Dr. Vasquez explained. "We exist partially outside normal space-time, which gives us a unique perspective on threats that approach from those same dimensions." Admiral Kextar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's environmental systems. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Current estimates suggest a minimum of 10,000 vessels, each one larger than your flagship," Captain Rodriguez replied. "But Admiral, that's not the worst part. The Devourers don't just consume matter, they learn. Every civilization they destroy, every technology they encounter, becomes part of their collective knowledge. They're not the same enemy that was defeated 1,000 years ago. They're stronger, smarter, and they know exactly how the galaxy's defenses were structured the last time." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet, the pride of the Empire, represented 12 of the most powerful warships ever constructed. Against 10,000 vessels that had consumed the knowledge of dozens of extinct civilizations, those 12 ships were less than insignificant. "What do you propose?" Kextar asked finally. "An alliance," Captain Rodriguez said simply, "not just between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire, but between every space-faring civilization in the galaxy. We share our phase drive technology. You provide the industrial capacity to build a combined fleet, and together we develop strategies that the Devourers won't expect." "Share your technology," Physic interrupted. "Your phase drive is clearly your greatest strategic advantage. Why would you give that up?" Dr. Vasquez answered this time, her expression serious. "Commander, advantages are only meaningful if there's a galaxy left to enjoy them." The Devourers represent an extinction-level threat to all organic life. Territorial concerns become rather irrelevant when faced with complete annihilation. Captain Rodriguez nodded. Besides, sharing our technology serves our long-term interests. We've spent 50 years as silent guardians precisely because we knew this day would come. We've been preparing for a war that we cannot fight alone. She paused, looking directly at Admiral Kextar. Admiral, humans have a saying. The best defense is a good offense. For half a century, we've been playing defense, preventing wars and catastrophes through stealth and manipulation. But the Devourers can't be negotiated with, can't be deterred, and can't be hidden from. They can only be fought. And you believe we can win? Kextar asked. I believe we can survive, Captain Rodriguez replied, which is more than any of us can say if we face them separately. Admiral Kextar walked to the main view screen, studying the sleek lines of the human vessel. Despite its relatively small size, he was beginning to understand that the UES Phantom represented power beyond anything he had previously imagined. Not the power to destroy. The Zephyrian Empire had plenty of that. But the power to appear anywhere, know anything, and act without detection. Captain Rodriguez, he said finally, what would this alliance require from the Zephyrian Empire? 3 things, she replied without hesitation. First, access to your industrial facilities. Human technology is sophisticated, but we lack the manufacturing capacity to build a galaxy-wide defense network. Second, your tactical expertise. The Zephyrian military has more experience with large-scale fleet operations than any other civilization. Third, your leadership. Our leadership. Admiral, Earth has spent 50 years operating in secret. We're very good at gathering intelligence and working behind the scenes, but we have no experience with open diplomacy on this scale. The Zephyrian Empire, on the other hand, has been managing interstellar politics for millennia. We need you to help us convince the other major powers that this alliance is necessary. Kextar considered this carefully. Everything about the situation violated his military training and political instincts. Allying with an unknown species, sharing advanced technology, restructuring the entire galactic defense paradigm. It was madness. But the alternative was extinction. Commander Thisik, he said finally, your assessment. His tactical officer had been studying the sensor data with the intensity of someone whose life depended on understanding what he was seeing. Admiral, if their data is accurate, traditional defensive strategies are useless against the Devourers. Our standard tactics assume enemies that operate within normal space-time constraints. These do not. He gestured to the display showing the Devourer fleet movements. Look at their approach vectors. They're not moving through space from point A to point B. They're manifesting at point B directly from higher dimensional space. Every defensive formation we know becomes irrelevant when the enemy can appear inside your perimeter without warning. Unless Dr. Vasquez interjected from the screen, your entire fleet can operate in those same dimensions. Phase drive technology doesn't just allow stealth. It allows 3-dimensional forces to fight effectively against enemies operating in 11 dimensions. Admiral Kextar made his decision. Captain Rodriguez, I will present your proposal to the Imperial Council. But I need something from you first. Name it. Proof. If you can truly go anywhere and see everything, then you know things about the Empire that even I don't know. Give me something that will convince the Council that your capabilities are real. Captain Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Dr. Vasquez, then smiled. Admiral, 3 days ago, the Imperial Science Directorate completed testing on Project Deepwatch, an experimental sensor array designed to detect threats approaching from extradimensional space. The project was classified at the highest levels, known only to the Emperor himself and 5 members of the Inner Council. Kextar felt his blood turn cold. Project Deepwatch was so secret that even his security clearance didn't extend to it. The fact that these humans knew about it meant they had access to the Empire's most closely guarded secrets. The testing was successful. Captain Rodriguez continued, but the range is limited to approximately 50 light-years. The energy requirements are also enormous. The array can only operate for 6 hours at a time before requiring a 48-hour cooldown period. Every detail was correct. Kextar knew because he had been briefed on the energy requirements just yesterday, though he hadn't been told what the energy was for. "How long have you known about Deepwatch?" he asked quietly. "We've been monitoring its development for 2 years," Dr. Vasquez replied. "We also provided some of the theoretical framework, though we disguised our contributions to look like independent research by your own scientists. You've been helping us develop weapons to defend against an enemy we didn't know was coming." "Admiral," Captain Rodriguez said gently, "we've been helping everyone develop weapons to defend against an enemy we all need to survive. The Andorian quantum torpedoes, the vegan shield harmonics, the Centauri temporal displacement cannons, all of those technologies had a little human influence in their development. The scope of human involvement in galactic affairs was staggering. For 50 years, they had been quietly nudging dozens of civilizations toward developing exactly the technologies that would be needed to fight the Devourers. "Why?" Kextar asked. "Why spend half a century preparing for a war you could have prevented simply by warning us?" Captain Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that spoke of difficult decisions made in isolation. "Admiral, would you have believed us? 50 years ago, would the Zephyrian Empire have taken seriously a warning from a species that had just developed faster than light travel? Would any civilization have restructured their entire military doctrine based on the word of unknown aliens? Probably not," Kextar admitted. "Instead, we chose a different path. We made sure that when this moment came, every major civilization would have the tools they needed and the experience necessary to use them effectively. We turned preparation into progress, made survival look like innovation." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward on the screen. "Admiral, humans have a talent for seeing patterns and preparing for possibilities that others consider remote. It served us well throughout our history. When we realized the Devourers would return, we began playing a very long game. And now the game is ending," Captain Rodriguez added. "The time for subtlety and manipulation is over. Now we need open cooperation, shared resources, and coordinated strategy. Now we need to fight together or die separately." Admiral Kextar looked around his bridge at the officers who had served with him for years. These were beings he trusted with his life, who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious time and again. Now he was asking them to trust in an alliance with a species that had been manipulating galactic politics since before most of them were born. "Admiral," Thisik said quietly, "I recommend we accept their proposal." "You do?" "Sir, they could have conquered us at any time in the past 50 years. They could have eliminated our entire civilization without us ever knowing they existed. Instead, they helped us develop better weapons and stronger defenses. That suggests their intentions are genuine." Kextar nodded slowly. His tactical officer was right. Actions spoke louder than words, and human actions over the past half-century suggested a species committed to preservation rather than conquest. "Captain Rodriguez," he said formally, "the Zephyrian Empire accepts your proposal for alliance. I will present our agreement to the Imperial Council and recommend immediate ratification." "Thank you, Admiral," Captain Rodriguez replied, and for the first time since the conversation began, she looked genuinely relieved. "There's one more thing. We'd like to invite you aboard the Phantom. It's time you saw exactly what we're offering to share." An hour later, Admiral Kextar found himself in the most advanced spacecraft he had ever seen. The Phantom's interior was a seamless blend of human comfort and technological sophistication that made even the finest Zephyrian vessels seem crude by comparison. "This is our phase drive core," Dr. Vasquez explained, leading him through a chamber that seemed to exist in more dimensions than his eyes could properly process. "It operates by convincing local spacetime that the ship exists in multiple locations simultaneously, then collapsing those possibilities into the desired reality. Kextar studied the technology with the fascination of someone who had spent his life working with advanced systems. The power requirements must be enormous. Actually, they're surprisingly modest, Dr. Vasquez replied. We're not fighting the laws of physics. We're exploiting the fact that at quantum scales, reality is far more flexible than most people realize. Captain Rodriguez joined them in the drive chamber. Admiral, what you're seeing represents humanity's greatest achievement and our greatest risk. This technology could revolutionize galactic civilization or destroy it completely if misused. And you're willing to share it freely. With our allies, yes. But Admiral, there's something you need to understand about human nature. We're a species that learns from our mistakes, sometimes very hard lessons. We know what happens when advanced technology falls into the wrong hands. She gestured to a wall display that showed Earth's history, wars, devastation, recovery, and progress. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning to split atoms. We nearly poisoned our own planet learning to industrialize. We nearly erased our own civilization learning to manage information technology. But you survived. We survived because we learned to cooperate when survival was at stake. We learned to share technology when the alternative was mutual destruction. We learned to think beyond our immediate interests when faced with threats that could end everything we cared about. Admiral Kextar understood. The humans weren't just offering technology. They were offering wisdom earned through bitter experience. They were offering partnership based on the recognition that some challenges could only be met through unity. Captain, he said finally, what's our first step? We call a gathering of the Galactic Council. We present the evidence, share our intelligence, and begin building the largest military alliance in galactic history. We have 18 months to prepare for the greatest threat any of us have ever faced. She paused, looking out at the stars through the Phantom's viewports. Admiral, humanity has spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Now it's time to find out if we prepared well enough. As Admiral Kextar looked out at those same stars, he realized that everything was about to change. The age of isolated civilizations pursuing their separate destinies was ending. The age of galactic unity, forged in the fires of necessity and tempered by the threat of extinction, was beginning. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had spent half a century becoming invisible so they could emerge at the moment when being seen mattered most. The silent guardians were silent no more.